Phones were lighting up, timelines were going crazy, and for a second, it felt like the entire internet stopped breathing. Because this time, Tamar Braxton wasn't trending for a catchy one-liner or a shady moment on reality TV. She was trending for something much darker. Tamar herself said that the world of reality television didn't just break her spirit, it almost cost her life. And if that wasn't heavy enough, her mother Evelyn's old abuse claims suddenly started to sound a lot more serious, a lot more urgent, and a lot more connected than anyone wanted to admit. According to interviews, leaked clips, and years of on-camera tension, Tamar wasn't just dealing with contracts and producers. She was fighting for her sanity in a system that treated her pain like entertainment. At the same time, Evelyn was out here warning the world that her daughter was being mistreated behind closed doors, hinting at things fans could only guess at. Now people are asking, were those warnings ignored? Did the chase for ratings blind everyone to what was really happening? Tonight, we're breaking down the timelines, the interviews, the claims, and the emotional fallout that has the Braxton family and their fans completely divided. When the cameras first started rolling on the Braxton family, it all felt exciting. There were lights, crews, glam teams, and a promise that the world would finally see their story in full. At least, that's what everyone thought. For Tamar, it was supposed to be her moment to shine, to step out from the background and show the world who she really was. But as the seasons went on, it stopped feeling like a dream and started feeling more like a trap that got tighter every time she signed a new contract or walked onto a set filled with people who saw her more as a storyline than a human being. According to what has been said in interviews and on the show itself, Tamar was always the loud one, the funny one, the dramatic sister who could turn any quiet scene into a memeable moment. Producers loved that. Clips of her reactions would go viral and fans would laugh, but behind the scenes, it started to wear her down. She wasn't just doing the most, she was carrying the weight of being the built-in villain and comic relief at the same time. Every time a fight broke out, every time the family had a tense moment, somehow the cameras would cut to Tamar's face, Tamar's reaction, Tamar's meltdown. Slowly, it began to feel less like reality and more like a scripted circus that she couldn't escape. People close to the situation have said that Tamar would walk into filming already exhausted, knowing exactly what they were going to push her buttons about that day. Old issues, private wounds, sensitive topics that she had begged them not to keep dragging into the spotlight would suddenly become the main focus of an episode. And when she tried to shut down or walk away, it wasn't seen as a boundary, it was seen as great footage. There were nights when, according to those who've spoken out, Tamar would leave filming and sit in her car, staring at her phone, wondering how she ended up feeling so alone while being watched by millions. Fans saw the edited version, where she snapped back, rolled her eyes, or stormed off. What they didn't see were the long conversations afterward, where she questioned if she was being fair to herself, if she was being fair to her son, and if all this so-called exposure was worth her sanity. Around the same time, her mother Evelyn was starting to speak publicly in a way that made everything even more complicated. In interviews, she hinted that Tamar was not just being pushed by producers, but also mistreated in her personal life. She said she was tired of her daughter being hurt and misused, and she made it clear that she believed a lot of pain was happening behind closed doors. That one choice, to speak out, shook the entire Braxton fanbase and split the audience into people who thought she was protecting her daughter and people who thought she was saying too much. For Tamar, it meant that her private struggle was suddenly being dissected from every angle. Fans were shocked. Commentators were replaying old clips of her and her then-husband, trying to match Evelyn's words with facial expressions, body language, and small details from years of footage. Every touch, every argument, every tense silence was turned into evidence that something darker had been going on the whole time. The family was left divided between wanting to protect each other and wanting to defend themselves from the court of public opinion. Behind the scenes, it's been said that Tamar would sit with her phone in her hand, scrolling through comments that ranged from love and concern to harsh judgment and blame. Some people praised her for being strong. Others called her dramatic. Some called Evelyn brave for speaking up. Others accused her of ruining her daughter's chance at fixing her marriage. Imagine being in the middle of that storm, trying to heal while the world debates whether your pain is real or just good television. There were also whispers about tense conversations between Tamar and producers once Evelyn's comments hit the public. Allegedly, some people in charge were more worried about legal issues and potential fallout than her mental state. Instead of asking, "Are you okay?" the questions started sounding more like, "What are you going to say about this on camera?" and "Can we talk about it in the next episode?" The emotional stakes were sky high for Tamar, but for the production machine, it was just another twist in an already dramatic season. In those moments, Tamar's relationship with reality TV became even more complicated. On one side, it had given her visibility, opportunities, and a chance to build her own brand. On the other side, it had turned some of her darkest experiences into entertainment for people to react to, gossip about, and judge. She was expected to perform while also dealing with rumors about her marriage, her mental health, and her relationship with her own mother, all at the same time. According to sources who have spoken over the years, there were days when Tamar would walk into a scene already on edge because she knew what was coming. A sit-down that looked innocent on camera would start with a producer pulling her aside, gently saying things like, "You know the viewers really want to understand how you're feeling," or "This is your chance to tell your side of the story." But once the camera started rolling, the questions would get sharper, the tone more probing, and before she knew it, she was reliving trauma she hadn't even finished processing yet. The balance between telling your story and being exploited started to crumble. It's been said that Tamar didn't always feel like she had the option to walk away because contracts were signed, expectations were set, and there were teams of people counting on her to deliver. Add to that the pressure of being part of a famous musical family with a legacy to protect, and you can see how the weight on her shoulders got heavier with every season. Evelyn's statements only intensified everything. When a mother goes on record saying she is tired of seeing her daughter hurt, it hits differently. It raised questions that never really went away. Was Tamar really being supported by the people around her, or was she just being managed and controlled? Fans started replaying old scenes of Evelyn warning her daughters, scolding them, trying to guide them. Suddenly, every moment between mother and daughter carried more meaning than before. The warmth, the tension, the protective instinct, and the sharpness all looked like pieces of a bigger emotional puzzle. As more time passed, the cracks in Tamar's public persona became more obvious. She went from the loud, unstoppable force on screen to someone who looked tired in certain interviews, more guarded in her answers, more careful about what she shared. People close to her later said that she felt surrounded by expectations she could no longer meet. She had to be entertaining, but she also had to be strong. She had to be honest, but not so honest that it made everyone uncomfortable. She had to protect her family image, even when the family itself was hurting from the inside. All of this built up layer by layer, year after year, until the phrase "reality TV almost killed me" stopped sounding like an exaggeration and started sounding like a literal warning. What happens to a person when every breakdown becomes a clip, every argument becomes a storyline, and every private wound becomes something strangers comment on from behind a screen? That question sat right at the center of Tamar's journey, especially once her mother's abuse claims were out in the world and could never really be taken back. There came a point where that question stopped being something fans debated online and became something very real for the people closest to Tamar. They have quietly shared that the shift didn't happen in one dramatic explosion, but in a series of small, painful moments that piled up until she simply could not carry them anymore. Long nights with no sleep, endless calls about contracts, arguments over scenes she didn't want aired, and comments from strangers that cut deeper than they should have. It was like being trapped in a house with every wall made of mirrors, and each reflection showed a version of her that was slightly more broken than the last. People who were around during those years say Tamar began to change in ways that The conflicts did not magically disappear, though. There were still disagreements over who said what, who caused what, and who should have done more to help. Some people close to Tamar hinted that she struggled with feeling betrayed, not just by producers or executives, but also by people in her circle who, in her view, did not step in soon enough. Others insisted they did everything they could, but were fighting against a machine too big to stop. The truth likely sits somewhere in the middle, messy and uncomfortable, just like most real family stories. As Tamar slowly began to heal and share more of her side, she talked about wanting to reclaim her story. She was tired of being reduced to a dramatic clip or a messy headline. She wanted to be seen a full person, with good days and bad days, with mistakes and growth, not just as the explosive character the audience had grown used to. She spoke about boundaries, about reclaiming her power, and about no longer allowing others to profit from her pain without acknowledging the cost. Still, the shadow of Evelyn's abuse claims lingered. Over every conversation, whenever Tamar mentioned feeling used or mistreated, people connected it back to those earlier interviews where her mother said she was tired of watching her suffer. Every news statement, every cryptic post, every emotional moment was filtered through that lens. Some fans felt vindicated in their belief that things had been wrong for a long time. Others insisted that no one truly knew the full story, besides the people involved. By this point, the idea that reality TV had almost killed Tamar was no longer just a dramatic line. It was a summary of years of pressure, conflict, and emotional exhaustion that had almost pushed her past the edge. Evelyn's words about mistreatment added another layer, turning the situation from a simple tale of burnout into something much more serious, much darker. Together, those elements created a story that forced viewers to ask themselves whether their love of messy television had come at too high a price for the people actually living it. As the dust slowly settled from that first wave of shock, something strange started happening. Instead of fading away like most headlines do, the conversation around Tamar kept growing. Not just in fan spaces or gossip pages, but in places where people actually talk about mental health, contracts, and how far the entertainment world is willing to push someone before they break. Suddenly, this wasn't just a Braxton storyline anymore. It was an example people pointed to when they wanted to show how dangerous it can be when someone's real life becomes a product. According to people who work behind the scenes, the industry has a pattern. When someone starts to crack, there's a brief moment of silence, a wave of prayers up posts, a few official statements about support, and then, quietly, the machine tries to move on. But with Tamar, moving on wasn't that simple. She had spoken openly about feeling unprotected and used. Her mother had spoken even more bluntly, saying she was tired of watching her child be mistreated. Fans had receipts, quotes, and clips to back up what they were feeling. It made it much harder for anyone to pretend this was just a one-time crisis. There were reports that meetings were held at different levels to figure out how to handle the situation. Some people wanted to distance themselves, to say this was a private matter and not related to any show or project. Others felt guilty, like they had watched things get worse in slow motion and only stepped in once everything nearly fell apart. The tension in those rooms, according to insiders, was rooted in one basic question that kept coming up in different ways. Where is the line between documenting someone's life and exploiting their pain? While executives debated, the audience kept talking. People dug up old scenes where Tamar tried to voice how overwhelmed she felt and matched them with later interviews where she described her breaking point. They compared the playful arguments from early seasons with the heavier ones that came later, noticing how the mood shifted over time. Fans who once looked forward to every dramatic Braxton moment now admitted they re-watched certain episodes with a knot in their stomachs, wondering how much hurt was hiding under the surface of all that good television. In the middle of all this, Evelyn's earlier claims about mistreatment continued to echo. Her words about not wanting to see her daughter suffer felt like a warning that had never been fully addressed. Some people said she had been the only one brave enough to say out loud what others were thinking, but were too afraid to share. Others argued that putting such serious accusations into the public made everything harder to handle quietly. Either way, no one could deny that her voice had shifted the narrative from messy reality star to woman in danger. Within the family, emotions were all over the place. Imagine being one of the sisters, trying to balance love, loyalty, and your own experiences with the same industry. Some of them had their own issues with production, edits, and how they were portrayed. They had all felt the sting of being turned into characters instead of full people at one time or another. But not everyone agreed on how to respond. There were likely moments where one sister wanted to speak out more, and another thought it would only make things worse. Families rarely move as one clean unit, and this was no exception. People close to the situation say that there were deep, difficult conversations behind closed doors. Conversations about whether to keep filming, whether to step away from certain projects, and how to deal with the long shadow of Evelyn's public statements. Some family members reportedly felt like they were being asked to pick sides they never wanted to choose between: support Tamar publicly, risk falling out with powerful people, or stay quiet and feel like they were abandoning her. That kind of emotional tug-of-war leaves scars, even if the public never sees them. As time passed, Tamar began slowly stepping back into the spotlight on her own terms. She did interviews where she talked about healing, therapy, and learning to set boundaries. She mentioned feeling like she had been used and not properly compensated, and she made it clear that she did not want to return to the same kind of environment that pushed her so close to the edge. Fans were relieved to see her smiling again, but many also noticed that her energy was different. Still funny, still sharp, but with a layer of caution that hadn't been there before. The conversation around reality TV also shifted because of this. Other people who had been on different shows started speaking more honestly about their own experiences. Some admitted they had been encouraged to fight, to drink more, to talk about things that should have stayed private, all for the sake of a traumatic episode. They talked about long filming days, small paychecks compared to how much money the shows made, and the emotional toll of seeing their worst moments replayed online over and over. Tamar's story, combined with Evelyn's earlier warnings, became part of a bigger pattern that was harder and harder to ignore. Still, every time her name came up, so did the memories of what her mother had said. That layer made everything feel heavier. It wasn't just about contracts or edits anymore. It was about the suggestion that there had been deep, painful mistreatment on more than one front, and that it had gone on for far too long. Even when people tried to keep the focus strictly on the television side of things, those older claims sat there like a shadow in the corner of the room. Fans also began questioning their own role. Many admitted they had once rushed to comment on every messy clip, picking sides in arguments, mocking breakdowns, and treating real tears like performance. Now, with the knowledge of how close things had come to tragedy, some felt uncomfortable looking back at their own reactions. They asked themselves whether constantly demanding more drama had helped create the exact environment that nearly destroyed someone they claimed to support. The media reactions were just as mixed. Some outlets focused on the emotional side, highlighting her courage in speaking up and framing her as a strong woman who survived a dangerous situation. Others leaned into the sensational angle, treating her pain like just another breaking story to be squeezed dry and then abandoned when something newer popped up. That contrast perfectly showed the same cycle she had been caught in for years. Her worst moments became content, even in the middle of a conversation about how wrong that cycle was. Meanwhile, Evelyn stayed firm in her position. Whenever she did speak, she stood by her earlier comments, insisting she had only ever wanted to protect her child. For many mothers watching, that resonated. They saw someone who, whether you agreed with her methods or not, could not sit still while she believed her daughter was in danger. At the same time, there was no easy guidebook for how such a delicate situation should have been handled. Speak up and risk chaos, or stay silent and risk something worse. Neither option feels good when you are the one living it. The reality is that the Braxton story became more than just a family saga. It turned into a lens through which people could see how power, money, contracts, and emotional health collide in the entertainment world. Tamar's claim that reality TV had almost cost her life, combined with Evelyn's warnings about mistreatment, turned all their past episodes into something more than reruns. Suddenly, every on-camera joke, every flare-up, every confession looked like a piece of a bigger story that had been trying to surface all along, but kept getting buried under laughter, trending clips, and promotional trailers. Some insiders say that after everything, certain people in the industry really did start to rethink how they approached reality programming. There were quiet discussions about mental health support, about giving cast members access to resources, and about cutting back on the most extreme tactics used to stir up fights. Others are more cynical and believe not much has truly changed, only the way things are presented publicly. Either way, Tamar's experience carved itself into the conversation in a way that cannot easily be erased. The result is a complicated legacy. On one side, a woman who almost lost everything but fought her way back and now speaks more openly about what she went through. On another side, a mother whose public statements forced people to confront uncomfortable questions about what had been happening off camera. And surrounding them, a family trying to heal while the world watches and comments, never fully stepping away, but never quite seeing the whole picture either. In the middle of all these layers, one thing became clear to anyone really paying attention. This was never just a story about one daughter and one show. It was about a pattern that had started long before any camera crew walked into their lives. People who grew up in strict homes, in households where image mattered more than feelings, saw pieces of their own story in the way Tamar and Evelyn clashed and clung to each other at the same time. The sharp words, the protective instincts, the deep love, and the unresolved hurt all existed together in every scene they shared. When Evelyn spoke about mistreatment and said she was tired of seeing her daughter hurt, she was not just talking to an interviewer. It felt like she was talking to every parent who had ever watched their child succeed on paper while silently collapsing inside. But her words also forced people to look at the complicated role a parent can play. She had raised strong, talented daughters, pushed them to greatness, demanded excellence. Yet the same intensity that built them up could sometimes feel like pressure that never let them breathe. Fans saw that contradiction and felt the tension between care and control. For Tamara, that tension was part of the weight that nearly crushed her. There was the pressure to be the star, the pressure to support her family's legacy, the pressure to keep viewers entertained, and the pressure to live up to the expectations of a mother who had sacrificed so much. Add on top of that the harsh glare of the public and the alleged mistreatment behind the scenes that Evelyn pointed to, and it starts to make sense that she reached a point where she believed there was nothing left to give. Not to the cameras, not to the fans, and not even to herself. Even in her most vulnerable moments, though, there were flashes of resistance. Little comments in interviews where she hinted she was tired of feeling used, posts where she spoke about wanting freedom, peace, and control over her own story. Over time, those hints turned into clear statements. She called out unfair practices, described feeling like a product instead of a partner, and started to openly question the value of a system, but only seemed to love her when she was falling apart on screen. Fans who had followed her from the beginning felt the shift and realized this was more than just a rebrand, it was survival. The grief of losing Tracy made everything even heavier. When a family is already carrying so much unresolved pain, the loss of a sister who had her own battles with being overlooked and misunderstood hits differently. Viewers knew Tracy as the one who often felt left out of deals and music opportunities, yet showed up anyway. After she passed, old episodes featuring her took on new meaning. Scenes where she voiced feeling dismissed now looked like warnings too. The Braxtons were not just dealing with contracts and edits anymore. They were dealing with the reality that time had run out for one of them. As new projects and family appearances rolled out, the question hanging in the air was whether anything had truly changed. Some clips showed softer moments, more honesty, more attempts at healing. Other moments hinted that old habits die hard, especially when entertainment and real life are woven so tightly together. Still, the family seemed more aware than ever that their choices were being watched, not just as entertainment, but as a case study of what happens when generational expectations, industry demands, and personal wounds collide in public. Evelyn's earlier abuse claims continued to color the way people interpreted everything. Whenever Tamara spoke about feeling used or controlled, those statements echoed in the background, making every word sound more ominous. Some viewers fully believed that the mistreatment she hinted at was a major part of what almost pushed her over the edge. Others tried to keep the focus strictly on the pressures of fame and contracts. But no matter how anyone framed it, the idea that a mother had felt desperate enough to go public with such serious concerns made it impossible to treat any of this as simple reality show drama. There were quieter victories too, ones that did not trend but mattered just as much. Tamara talking openly about therapy and healing encouraged fans to seek help for themselves. People who had never taken their own mental health seriously before started recognizing warning signs in their own behavior. Some viewers said they reached out to friends or family members after hearing her describe how alone she felt. The same platform that once amplified her breakdowns, now, in a different way, amplified her recovery. That shift did not erase the harm, but it gave her story a new dimension beyond the chaos. In the end, the Braxton saga became a mirror. For some, it reflected the cost of chasing fame in a world where everything is content. For others, it reflected the complicated bonds between mothers and daughters, full of love, fear, and sometimes misplaced control. For many, it reflected the reality of living with pain that everyone can see, but not everyone understands. Tamar's statement that reality television had almost taken her life, paired with Evelyn's earlier claims about mistreatment, turned what could have been a forgettable chapter in pop culture into a lasting cautionary tale. And behind every headline, every leaked clip, every tearful confession, there is still a family trying to figure out where to go from here. They have lived through public highs and crushing lows, through standing ovations and private breakdowns. They have fought each other and defended each other, sometimes in the same breath. The cameras might capture some of that truth, but they will never capture all of it. What they do capture, however, is enough to remind anyone watching that no storyline is worth a person's life, and no amount of drama should ever be more important than someone's chance to heal. If you're still here listening to this, take a second and just breathe. You've just gone through years of pressure, pain, and survival in a few minutes, and that alone shows how heavy this story really is. This isn't just about one show or one family. It's about what happens when real people are pushed past their limits while the world watches from a distance. And remember, we are not claiming to know every detail. We're just reacting to what has been said in interviews, contracts, reports, and the moments they chose to share on camera. So now it's your turn. What do you think? Do you feel like the industry crossed the line with Tamar? Do Evelyn's old warnings about mistreatment hit you differently after everything that happened? Do you think reality TV can ever be truly safe for people who are already carrying so much on their shoulders? I want to hear from you, because these aren't just celebrity questions, they're human questions. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you stand, what shocked you the most, and what you think needs to change so another person doesn't reach the point where they feel like they have nothing left. Your comment is not just engagement, it's part of the conversation that keeps stories like this from being quietly swept away. And if you want more deep dives like this, where we slow down and really unpack what's going on behind the headlines, make sure you hit like, tap subscribe, and turn on the notifications. That way you won't miss the next breakdown when more updates, interviews, or family reactions come out. You're not just watching from the sidelines, you're part of the group that refuses to look away when things get uncomfortable. And honestly, that matters more than you know.